Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to this midweek review with Mr. John. I am Mr. John, and we are going to be talking about a few things after Jesus' death. And one of those is a thing about changing. I kind of like change. I know there are people there are all kinds of people, right? Some like change. I'm one of those that likes change, especially when it comes to things that we do. I don't like to do the same thing over and over. And then there are those that like the rituals of doing the same thing over and over and over. They get comfortable and they just don't like to leave that. But I want to ask you this. What if I told you I'm going to change you? How would you feel? Would you be comfortable if I was going to change you personally? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to change you into a giraffe. I'm saying I'm going to change kind of your personality, your way of thinking about stuff. And that tends to be a little bit less comfortable for us. And it brings me to a story about a guy named Saul. Saul was this guy. Now, Saul gets a bad rap, and he deserves it, right? Saul deserves it. Saul was a guy who believed in the Old Testament. He did not believe in the ways of Jesus. He thought Jesus was changing God's way to fit him, to fit Jesus, where Saul was more like the Pharisees of the day. He believed in the law. He believed in the law that the Pharisees had written. And so he's following their law to the T. He knows his Old Testament. He can recite it word for word. So Saul is a religious guy, but he is what we call kind of a zealot. He believes so strongly in this belief that he cannot change from that point of view. And when Jesus comes into it, he's speaking the way Jesus did. Even though he was preaching Old Testament, he was preaching different than the Pharisees, the law that he had learned. So Jesus was kind of this bad guy in Saul's eyes. And so when Jesus passes away, Saul takes it upon himself to be one of those guys that goes out and he persecutes the Christians that are out there, the people that are following Jesus. Saul is out persecuting him. And we see an early version of Saul in the stoning of Stephen. Stephen was a follower of Christ who gets martyred. He gets stoned to death. Saul is actually the dude that kind of is telling everybody what to do, and he actually grabs the coats. He holds the robes or coats of the people throwing rocks at Stephen so they have range of motion. I don't know, but he is a part of this and he's leading it. Well, one day Saul, he's out persecuting. He's going to find the people that believe in Jesus. He's going to persecute him, and he's on his way to Damascus, this town. And on the road, all of a sudden, there is a flash of light. He goes down off of his horse, and he's sitting there, and Jesus appears to him and says, "Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And so Saul is like pretty much speechless. Who is this? And Jesus tells him who he is and tells him he's going to go into Damascus and a guy's going to come and pray over him. And things are going to happen. Okay? Just going to leave it at that little tingly part right there. But so this goes on. But the funny thing is, Saul, after this bright light flashes, Saul is blinded. It actually says in the Bible that he was blinded. It was like scales were covering his eyes. Now, I'm an old-fashioned guy, right? I'm not thinking like guppy goldfish scales. I'm thinking like these big old dragony scales, right, are covering his eyes. So he goes in to Damascus and he's hiding, right? This is a persecutor of Christians, and now he's in his weakest state. He's probably thinking, oh man, here come the Christians. They're going to come and get me. They're going to come and kill me. And actually, Jesus goes to a guy named Ananias in Damascus. And Ananias is a little older and probably not very strong, and he is a Christian. And Jesus says, "Listen, you're going to go to this guy, and you're going to pray for him." And Ananias has to be thinking, "Whoa, whoa, you want me to go pray for Saul? If I go in there and proclaim Jesus, he's going to kill me." So Ananias is scared, but Ananias is a follower of Christ. And if Christ says to do something, Ananias is going to do it. So he goes. So he goes into the room where Saul is, and Saul, like I said, Saul has to be frightened in this moment. He's blind. He can't see. So the attacks can come from any place. And Ananias walks up to Saul, and he places his hand on him, which probably would startle you, right? And oh, here it comes, and yes, it comes. The prayer that God wanted Ananias to pray. And he prays over Saul. And in that moment, it says the scales that were covering his eyes falls off. And Saul was able to see. Now, I love that we can look at this in a couple ways in this able to see, right? He was he was blinded, and now he can see, right? Everything around him he can see. Like there's a happy face guy right here, and we see my Christmas tree with the top, right? We can see all that. We can see it. But he also gets to understand. Understand what Jesus is all about. And Saul, in this moment, is transformed. He is changed. And I love that when we read our Bible and we kind of get to know who Jesus is, and we understand the things that Jesus did to take away our sin, to give us that hope of eternity, that we understand and trust Jesus, we get to have that faith, and we get to have that eternity in heaven with him. We see that the gospel is true. We see the good news of Jesus Christ, right? We understand what is going on with Jesus, and we follow him, and we get to have that hope and have heaven forever. Saul, who thought he knew who God was, right? He knew the Old Testament, but he kind of did what the Pharisees did, kind of formulated their own, kind of walked off the path of who God was and who Jesus is, walked off that path. So they were not in full understanding of who Jesus was. And now when Jesus made himself known to Saul, it changed his vision of who God was. It changes his understanding, but it also does something really cool. It changed his name. The old dude that was not a follower of Jesus is now this new dude named Paul. Saul goes from Saul to Paul. Paul becomes probably the biggest evangelist for Jesus that we know. We know he's the biggest one in the New Testament. He like writes 3/4 of the New Testament. He goes out into the world, and he just tells the world about who Jesus is, and he's anointed by Jesus to do all these great things. He's put into precarious positions that would kill most people, and God saves him. He's like shipwrecked like 3 times, right? And he survives every shipwreck and keeps on going, telling the world about Christ. So as we continue this month, I hope you are taking in these verses that we're going to learn. You get a new verse today. And for this month, I hope you are putting it into your heart. I hope you're hearing these stories, and it makes you go, oh, I got to check this out. Let me get into my Bible. Let me look at this up. Let me see what it says here. And I hope that you are changing. Your heart is changing for God. Not like a giraffe. I'm saying it's changing. It's understanding who God is, and that you can have eternal life with him. Hey, if you got any comments, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you. Have a good one. Bye. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. Proverbs 16:9.